In this video, I'm going to help demystify creating triangles with CSS borders. We're going to look not only on how you can do it, but making sure you understand how they're working, what's really going on at play in the background. And we're going to look at a cool CSS mixin. You can use them if ever you have a site where you need a whole bunch of them for some reason. Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Kevin, and here at my channel we learn how to make the web and how to make it look good with weekly tips, tricks, and tutorials, just like in this video here where we're exploring CSS triangles, or well, borders to make triangles, which is kind of weird, right? I always thought it was weird, and it's the main reason I'm making this video, because the whole idea of making a triangle out of a border seemed really weird to me. I knew it worked, I used it a bunch, and I never really got what was going on. I just made it work, but that meant I was screwing around a lot. I had to sort of guess at what I was doing. It would be on the wrong side, or it just wouldn't work the way I was expecting it to. And eventually I'd always get there, but it seemed like a big waste of time. So eventually I decided to learn how they're working. I dove into it and I figured out what's going on. So that's what I want to show you, because once you understand how it's working, it just makes it so much easier to use. You're not wasting your time when you're writing your code anymore. So we're going to be looking at doing it as a pseudo element, because I think most of the time that's how you're going to be doing a triangle, since it's a sort of decoration. But we're really going to break down how it's working. We're going to look at it in a really long form, then shrink it down to the least amount of code we can do. And as I mentioned, we're also going to look at how we can create a Sass mixin to create triangles, because they're not something I use terribly often. It just comes up every now and then. And so I don't necessarily think it's something that you're going to be using a ton, but you're going to get this one site where you just need a whole bunch of triangles on it for some reason. And if you can control that with a Sass mixin, where you're literally writing one line of CSS over and over again instead of writing like 7 lines when it's a pseudo element positioned absolutely and stuff, we're going to have a bunch of lines. So it's nice when you can just write one line, condense everything down into a mixin. It's saved off in abstract land, and then you just reuse that over and over again. So those are all the things we'll be looking at in this video. Let's go and jump into it and check it out. All right, so here we are, just really quickly looking at the markup. There's not too much going on here, but you'll see I have put this class important on here. For this to work, you need an empty element. So it could be any element really, but it has to be empty. I'm not a fan of empty divs for decorative elements. And in general, for your triangle probably has a purpose. It's going to be a decoration of some sort, or might be an icon, whatever you want to use it for. So I'm going to be using it as a pseudo element on this paragraph called important. And I think if it's just for decoration purposes, for me, pseudo elements work super well for that. So you don't need empty divs floating around in your code. It may not be for every case, but as much as possible, that's what I like to try and do. So the first thing I'm going to do is, let's just come down to make our paragraph a bit more important. On our regular paragraphs here, let's just give these a color, and I'm using Sass for this. So because I'm using Sass, I can use RGBA, and instead of writing in the actual value, I can do sort of like a cheat code, which is just writing black and then 0.75, let's say. And then we can copy that onto its own line. And here I can write, instead of paragraph, we want our important. And here I can put this up to, say, a 0.9. So let's see what that looks like. This one is darker. I think I'm going to make this a little bit less, even more than it is now. So just so it really stands out. I wouldn't normally try and go too light on regular text. You want to make sure the contrast is high and easy to read. But it is standing out, but it's not really standing out enough. So this is where the little triangle or something like that can come in to help it out. So to do that, let's set up our pseudo element here. So important after. It could be a before as well, I guess. And actually, there's two things that I'm going to be putting a position absolute on this to get it where I want it to be, which means I'm also going to want to come and declare a position on this other than static. So we'll do a relative. So the absolute positioning on this gets positioned within my existing paragraph. So this is a pseudo element, so I'm going to do a little content like that, and a position absolute. I have had people ask me in the past, do pseudo elements have to be position absolute? No, definitely not, just because of how I'm going to be using it. This one does. If it's not, you do have to declare like position, not position display block or something like that though. And let's just give it a background for now. Background of, let's make it pink so we can actually see it. And I'll give it, for the moment, I'm going to give it a width of 1em and a height of 1em. Let's save. And there we go. We got a little pink element. So now I can actually position this where I want it to. So let's say we want to move it to the left of, let's just do 1.25 em because its width is 1 em. Anyway, we'll see, but we want to get it up right around here for now. And so for that, we can also give it a top of 0. And there we go. It's pretty much where I want it to be. I might move it down a little bit, but we want this to be focused on the triangle. So I'm not going to worry too much about exactly where it's showing up at the moment. And now is where the border magic comes in for the triangle. So what I'm going to do to start with is we're going to sort of break all this up, and then slowly but surely I'm going to eliminate this and get it down to the simplest thing we can. So I'm going to start like this, border width and border, oops, I wanted to put style. I want to break everything up as much as possible, like I said. So we see that we have a border on there. And now just to speed this up, I have this off screen because it's going to take a little while to type. So instead, we're going to do this. I'm going to give every side its own color and hit save on that. So now we're starting to see the yellow is a little difficult to see, but we can see that every side has a color on it. And I'm actually going to make this a lot bigger. Oops. I'm going to be taking the height and width off of it eventually anyway. So I want to make this a lot bigger so it just makes it super obvious what's actually happening while we're working here. As we see our little borders and everything is fine on there. But what we can do is let's just make this border like 15 pixels. And you notice when the borders are touching, they give you like a little diagonal thing here. So like they sort of meet halfway between the corner. And this is really what lets us have this magic of creating a triangle because of this split here. Now the thing is, we have this border that's being, we have a 15 pixel border here and here. If I take this width and height out, and I make this bigger, let's do all of it at the same time. I'm going to make this like 3em just to get really big for the moment. And we're going to take our width and our height out completely. And I'm going to hit save. So it doesn't currently have a width and height anymore, but it has this massive border. But because there's no width and a height, it's just border. We have only border, we have nothing else. And you can see that it's actually making that into a triangle. So that's kind of interesting, right? Do you see how each one of these is a triangle? And what you can do is, instead of having blue, yellow, and green, say I took all those out, I can come in and just write in transparent. And so 3 of those colors are now transparent, and one of the colors there is red, so it's giving me this red triangle. And if I come and take this background off, all I'm going to be left with is my red triangle. So I've gone ahead and made a triangle like that, which is really, really cool, I think. I'm going to bring the colors back on for 1 second, though. We don't need the background color here, but I'm going to bring all the colors back on just to make it... to show you how you can experiment with this, because you don't have to just have it like that. So I can say border width, and I can have different widths on these borders. They don't all have to be the same. So come and say 3em, say 10em. So it's going to sort of skew everything up a little bit when I do this, because it's changing the overall size of everything, right? So here we have our... so here we're setting the 3em and the 10em. So the 10em width is this one here. So it's causing this other one, which is only 3, to stretch out. So you're sort of controlling and giving yourself different sizes, or you can screw around and get different shapes for your triangles pretty much by manipulating the different borders. And this could just be a 1 if you wanted to, and then it would shrink down the other way. And be taller than it is, and you'd sort of get this flat triangle instead out of the red ones anyway, or a taller triangle out of those two. So some fun stuff that you can do there. And again, now let's go back to these being transparent. Now that we've sort of seen how that's working, so we can do transparent. And now, so now I have this important there. I'm going to the border width here, if I keep this as like a 0.5em or something, whoops, not nm, I can use this sort of to control the size of, whoops, that's probably a bit small. We'll go back to 1. Or I had it 3 before, we'll go to 1. So it's a little bit bigger, and you can play around with it and control the size of this triangle. So now it's an important paragraph, and I have this triangle that's sort of highlighting and making sure somebody reads it. Probably not the super most realistic example of it, but a cool way to use it. But I said we can clean all of this up, so you don't actually have to write it like this. I could set this up as just border, the border shorthand, and I could say 1em solid transparent. And then I could just overwrite the one color that the one side that I actually want to be using. So it could be one way to do it if you want, and probably the easiest way to do it and to be able to understand. So this has just become sort of this controlling of the color of it right underneath. Go back to red so we can actually see it though. If you don't like that, where you're overwriting it this way, another one, you could keep it like that, but instead of saying left color, you could just put in border color, and then here, whoops, color. You could come in and say like transparent, 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 and red. So that one, well, red, we're gonna see that it's there. So I'll change this over to green. And there we go. We can see that it's green, or then I could switch this one out, transparent, and then make this one over here, say purple. And just by changing which one of the four is transparent, you can have it move around and be a different triangle in the top, left, bottom, or right. So that can be useful. I'm going to go back though for now, and just to show if we do it this way, and I keep my left, we could actually keep this here and make a cool little mixin with this using Sass to get a triangle, little triangle mixins. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna write at mixin. And now normally I wouldn't declare my mixins here. I'd declare them probably in another file, but if it was all in one file, I'd be declaring my mixin at the very top of the page before any other CSS. But normally I'd have their own file devoted just to my abstracty stuff like mixins and variables and all that. But since we're doing it here just for demo purposes to keep everything together, and I'm going to call it mixin triangle. I could do this for pseudo triangles, so it's always a pseudo element automatically. I'm not going to do that this time just because the whole top and left property, we'd have to add extra arguments in there, and I want to simplify it a little bit for this demo. But you'll see how this can make life a lot easier in the long run. So what we're going to do is our triangle, what's the important things here is our border. You know what, let's do it for our pseudo triangle. I'm just trying to think. Should we? Let's do it for the pseudo triangle. Let's call it triangle. We'll do it for the whole pseudo element. Just because, as I said, in this project, my fake project here, I'm always doing it as a pseudo element. So for this to actually work, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to say position relative, because this is going to be declared on the element itself and not on the after part of it. So I want to make sure that this is, sometimes we might have already put it, but just in case we didn't, I want to make sure that it's there on the regular element. And then we're going to do it's an ampersand after. And the ampersand in Sass, I have a video where I talk about it a little bit, but it's the parent selector. So whatever my parent is, so if my parent was important, it's going to put important after. If I put inside of title, it's going to be title after. So now I can paste all this stuff in there. We're going to look at the compiled CSS in a little bit too, and hopefully this makes a little bit more sense. So I'm going to take everything I had, but I'm going to add in some arguments here. So I'm going to add in I'm only going to add in a top and a left, giving it like a right and a bottom, or some other options like that could be useful. But we're just going to give it a left, and I'm going to, we need to have a $sign in front of it. I'm going to give it a left, and I'm going to default all of these ones, and let's give it a top of 0. I'm going to give these default arguments. So if I don't put it, it's just going to default to 0, and if I need to move it, I can. Another one, let's give it the color. And my color, we won't default it to red. We'll default it to this orangey color that I'm using for my titles. So my color will default to this. Cool. And then I'm going to have my width and where it is, left, top, bottom, or right. So I'm going to come all the way to the front here because I have to declare these at the front. And I'm going to say size, and I'm going to say side. And let's turn off word wrap so we can see what I'm doing. No, it's just the color that's sticking off the side, so it's okay. So for the size and the side, they don't have a default argument, so they have to come before these ones. If you're giving things default arguments in Sass, they always have to come after. So if we do this before, I have my content, my position. My left will be my left value, and my top will be my top value. My border will be use the size that's going to get declared when we use it. And there's my color, which will be here, color. And the one that's kind of weird is the side. So the side, I can't just write side like this because anytime, these are arguments, but they work a lot like variables. And you can't use a variable or an argument inside a property. They're expected to be values. So that means they're on the right side of the colon. In this case, I want to use it on the left side. You can't do that unless you use something called interpolation. So I'm going to start by putting a hashtag, and then I'm going to wrap this all in curly braces. And what that means is it's actually going to work the way you'd expect it to, pretty much. We're sticking with the simple explanation on it right now. So I think with all of that, if I hit save, nothing should actually change. Actually, my triangle should disappear. And now what I can do, let's move my important after it, because I said we have to work after the mixin is declared. I can delete this line because I'm going to get it declared here. And what I can do is at include triangle. And I have to give it a couple of things here. So I have to say the size. So we'll stick with 1em because I was using that before. And we have to give it a side. So I'll say left and I'll hit save. And once that refreshes, there we go. There's my triangle. And now if I wanted to move it over from the left, what I could do is I could say my left should actually be negative 1.5. We'll change it a little from what I was using it before and hit save. And it should jump over 1.5em this way. There we go. And just to show you how we could play with this a little bit, let's go on to my title. So dot title at include. And normally I'd have it with my title styles and all that, but we're keeping it all on one screen, like I said. So at include triangle. And now let's make this one a bit bigger. We can say 2em. We want it on the left. And let's just hit and let's give it a different color for fun. So I can say that my color should be blue, just so we can see that it's nice and easy to change. And boom, big triangle. It's also in M. I could change that to rem if I wanted to be smaller because it's going relative to the font size. And maybe we want to also say that the left, the left is, I don't know, negative, well, we'll do 1.5 rem. Oops. And just don't forget you have to comma separate these. So comma. And, you know, if I wanted it to be on the other side, I'm not making it look pretty right now, but I could switch that over to right, and now it's on the right side, and maybe this would become -2 or -4 or something like that. Not sure why I'd want to do this, but just saying that's a way that you could sort of play around with these. And you can see that using this mixin, the first time you do it and the first time you set it up does take a little bit. And it's not something, if you only had one triangle on your site or they're always exactly the same, you probably wouldn't want to go through all the trouble of doing this. But if it's an element that's repeating itself a lot, something like a mixin using Sass can really just speed up the use of the setting it all up and using it all the time. So I hope I've helped demystify borders as triangles in CSS for you. So something weird, but it makes sense once you understand it. And so I hope it does make sense to you. If it does, let me know, hit thumbs up, let me know you like the video. But if it doesn't, leave a comment down below and let me know you're still not too sure about it. Or even better yet, come on over to the community. If you haven't joined us over there yet, it's a Discord server. Just there's a link down, click it, you're invited, you're in. Simple as that. Come have a discussion. It can be about this. It can be about questions you're having with other things. We have people that are complete newbies there. We have super advanced people working in industry. There's myself. I'm as active as I can be in there. So I'd love for you to come over and say hi. Other than that, just a big thank you for watching this video and a massive thank you to my patrons for helping support me. If you don't know about Patreon, it's a service that you can use to support creators who make content you find valuable. So if you want to check that out, you can go down. There's a link to it in the description below. And a huge, massive extra bonus thank you to Lauren, who's my supporter of Awesome over on Patreon. Otherwise, that's about it. So until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.